Welcome to episode 17 of the Cellarcast. My brain kind of like short circuited the instant I hit record. That kind of tends to happen. It's funny because sometimes you can just talk super naturally off the cuff. And then as soon as you're being recorded and you feel like you have to say something, it's like you start thinking about it and you just can't you can't do anything. You're paralyzed. Uh, that's funny. I noticed that sometimes with some games, for instance, like I could play like Toho or something, or like a really intense game like that, or and I could be talking to someone, and as I was talking, I would kind of like lull myself into a state of focus, or I was just kind of relaxed. I don't know. It's interesting. Anyway, we're back in, back in the chair. I never leave this chair. Not a ton of like news this week that I really care about. There's like two things that I think are interesting. So I kind of this will be more of just a rambly. I talk about stuff I like this week. So the one thing, there's like two stories that I actually care about. Number one, I don't know how many people today are familiar with System Shock. It's funny because I actually mentioned this in the Eight Eyes video. I Most people are probably familiar with System Shock 2. I like System Shock 2. It's BioShock is kind of the spiritual successor to the System Shock series. Um, System Shock 1 is from 1994, which is kind of crazy that it's like the same year that Doom 2 came out. Uh, so I really love System Shock 1. Um, it's like a very early it's one of the first. My history of, or my knowledge of horror gaming is not incredibly tight, but it's one of the earliest like first person horror games that I can think of. Um, it's like a cyberpunk uh, first person horror game, and so I should probably just talk about what it's about. System Shock One is kind of, it's not a crazy original story. It's basically you're a hacker who let's see, what was it? Yeah, you're a hacker who, there's this like space station called the Citadel Station or something. And Citadel Station basically, it houses, it's this huge space station, like a kind of like a satellite, and it has all of these different levels, and it's basically like a little city where every single floor is a different it's like, I want to say like 10 or something, 9, 10 floors, might be wrong on that, and every single one is like a different sector of the city. So every single there's the like residential sector, there's like spaces for like business and like offices, there's like the technology sector, there's the where they have all the computers, and there's basically like the IT floor. There's like the warehouse floor level where they move all the supplies around and they store stuff. And so basically you're this hacker who hacks into the mainframe uh, of Citadel Station. Then you get arrested and brought to, I think, brought to the station, and like one of the executives or higher ups basically offers you, uh, he's like, hey, you're a hacker computer guy, I can give you cybernetic enhancements. um, wouldn't that be cool? Wouldn't you like that, you big nerd? All you have to do is, this space station is controlled by an artificial intelligence called Shodan. All you have to do is remove its like ethics protocols. And you're like, sure, I'll do that. And then you wake up. The game begins with you waking up in the medical bay after you've been in like like a sleep. Your body's been recovering from the surgery, and you've been in this like cryo sleep for a little bit while you heal, and then you wake up and you're like, oh, it seems like in the last few weeks, everything completely went to fuck, and it's because Shodan became an evil AI, and now you have to venture through the entire citadel and explore every inch of it. You pick up little weapons. There's like rogue robots and zombies that are like genetic mutations. And it's kind of also one of the earliest immersive sims, if anyone's familiar with Deus Ex, or I guess Deathloop is a more recent example. One of the first immersive sims. What I love about this game, okay, so a lot of people look at System Shock 1 and it's very like archaic looking. It's very like polygonal, I guess. Polygonal and sprite, like 2.5D looking game with like flat sprites and 3D spaces, and a lot of people look at it and they're like, oh, that looks old and jank, and also the original controls kind of suck. But if you kind of get past it, so one of the main things I would recommend if anyone who's curious about System Shock is to play the Enhanced Edition, because the Enhanced Edition, which was released by Night Dive, put a pin in that, the Enhanced Edition fixes one of the main problems with the game, and one of the main reasons that it's aged so poorly, and it's the controls. And it doesn't change it in any... It really adds one quality of life fix, and that is that in the original game, you have this whole like cybernetic interface on your UI, and you have just like a mouse that your mouse you can just go and like click on stuff, and you have like your inventory, you have different like abilities and cybernetic stuffs that you can activate and turn on and off, and you can like click on buttons to activate switches, to activate them in the world and all that. And in order to, now this is a first-person game, and in order to look around, you have to like physically drag the mouse to the side of the screen, and then it'll turn into like a little like swoop arrow to the right or to the left, and then you click and you will turn in that direction, and it's horrible. It was definitely a fix for an issue that they didn't know how to like solve. And the Enhanced Edition basically completely solves this issue by just letting you toggle in between free mouse and mouse look. You just like hit E on the keyboard and you switch from one to the other, and I think it works amazingly. So because it kind of adds this element that's a little bit like what people sort of praise the controls of like Silent Hill and the original like Resident Evil for, where it's like it's kind of slow, but that's the point. Like you're supposed to scare you because you aren't fully capable of making these twitch reactions all the time. You have to like fumble a little bit. I think it's great. It feels really natural once you get used to it, and then if you're able to get past the graphics and you really don't mind it looking a little dated, I actually really like that art style. I think it's really, really neat. The atmosphere in that game is just amazing. Like the darkness and these like corridors. There's such an amazing sensation of, or it's such a well captured sensation of being in a hostile space where literally like the world around you wants to kill you. Shodan wants to kill you, and she controls the space station. One of my favorite things is that every single room is every single room makes sense in context, like in the universe. So like with Doom, there was this I think they called it non or abstract level design, which is basically just like, yeah, it looks like that. Yeah, it looks like that. Uh, the computer base. That's the level's called computer base. Why is there just a puddle of, or just like a river of toxic slime running through it? I don't know. That's just what the level looks like. Where Doom had this very like, it doesn't really matter type of thing, and it works for that game. In System Shock, there's a lot of care put into every single room you can look at and like just think a little bit and be like, this room is probably like an office. This room was probably used for this. This room is here. There's nothing like that's just completely arbitrary. Oh, this is like a storage closet. Everything like makes sense. You can imagine this space station actually being used to live in, and like, you can imagine people walking through here before it was ruined. I especially love, there's like on the second level, I think, is the like computer center with like all of the controls for stuff. I'm pretty sure like one of the main like logic centers is there or something for Shodan. It's like locked off. You have to go back to it way later in the game. And I remember there's like a section, you like go down this hallway on the side, and on the to the right there's like a theater. It's like a movie theater type thing, or it's like a bunch of chairs set up with like a screen, a big screen in the front. And I'm like, oh, this is probably where they had like company presentations and stuff like that when there were people working down here. One of the things that makes it, I think, slides it more into the immersive sim category, or really strengthens that aspect, is that like everything there's all of these like environmental clues that are left around, like little props, cups on someone's desk, plants. It was a game where like I remember very specifically going to, I think, level 3. I still remember, I played this game like 2-3 years ago, and I still remember like these things about it because it's so memorable. I believe the third level is the like storage kind of like garage level of the station. And I remember like it's really dark, and there's like these elevators and crates and stuff that are just moving stuff up and down. And one of the kind of ongoing things that you discover is that Shodan has started, in her kind of like crazy cyborgness, not cyborg, AI-ness, she's been experimenting on humans at the station. And some of those have become like zombies. So like you fight zombies on like the first couple levels, and you get to the third level, and there's these weird like puddles of goo, and they like shoot. They're really annoying from what I remember. They shoot these like plasma balls at you, and I remember like opening up a door, like a garage door, and there's like one of these inside. So you kill it. You just bash it with like a pipe, and then you find a little like data pad on the side, and you download it, and you read it, and it is like this diary entry basically of this guy describing his body like slowly turning into this goo monster. And you're like, oh my god, that was the guy that I just killed. Whoa. And it gives this like super weird, almost like it's kind of like in a zombie movie where you feel bad because it was like once a normal person, and they become this thing, and like reading their like horror, like just him describing this like body horror as he's like melting essentially, and how he doesn't have much time left, and he's just so scared. You're like, oh my god. And then I just like I put him down, and it's such a like, maybe, you know, if you play a lot of these types of games, that's nothing special, but at the time, having that kind of like detail in the world, having that kind of context and storytelling was so unheard of. Very few games committed to telling so much of a story entirely through background elements. You don't get much. The actual like plot of System Shock is basically just you going through to eventually try and take down Shodan. But there's all of this. It's interesting because your play, there's like the backstory context that is just like, how would I describe? Not a lot of action, and then the post disaster story of trying to destroy Shodan, which is where all the action happens. So it splits it in this kind of interesting way where you are playing the action, exciting part of the story, with all the horror and elements and tension and stuff, and at the same time you're also discovering the non-action part, and you're just reading it and listening to voice dialogue, or sorry, like voice recordings, yeah, audio logs, reading people's emails. It's so immersive, and I love the soundtrack. It was so like personally affecting, because it's a lot of the soundtrack is like, it's very synthy, kind of like electronic, just kind of like high tension stuff. And then I recall there being like a lot of tracks that were just like banging, just like not electronic, like metallic banging sounds, and like the sound of like something, you know, maybe like dropping down a chute, and like the echoes as it like comes, the sound like bounces back up, and going through and being in this environment, it's almost like you can't discern what is the soundtrack and what is an actual like sound effect of like maybe something like stomping down the hall or something like that. And it was just so, I'm someone who's like very sound is a lot more effective at scaring me than visuals. Like, I can see something. Like, I remember playing Silent Hill, for instance, and I remember seeing like the spooky monsters. Like the first like really creepy monster that you encounter is in like the school, where it's the little goblin mush kids with the knives. And that as a visual really freaked me out for like a few seconds. And then eventually I just got like used to it. I was like, okay, you know, it freaked me out less and less the more that I encountered them. But the visual was like freaky. What did not like depreciate in scariness was the sounds. So in like Silent Hill, there's a lot of tracks in the original game that are just like pounding, like industrial machinery noises, just like pneumatic pumps, and just like crashing and just like that. And that is like, the louder it gets and the more overbearing. For some reason, just for me, that's incredibly, like, I can't handle that. That was like almost paralyzing for me, much more so than any of the enemies, which, you know, were freaky just in that they presented a threat, and that their designs were creepy. But what just completely terrorized me was like the soundscape of that game and how like overbearing it was. That's just like for me. I know some people have the exact opposite, where visuals are much scarier for them. And maybe that would actually, impact your enjoyment of System Shock, because the visuals aren't terribly scary by today's standards. But the audio, and if you just kind of let yourself get invested and kind of not relax, because that you're not supposed to relax, but if you just kind of like get past it and you let yourself get invested through the music and the sound effects and the ambience, the atmosphere of the game, it's really engrossing, and such just pushing through and solving these puzzles and mysteries to try and make progress was so really enrapturing. So I really love System Shock 1. I like System Shock. I've actually never beaten System Shock 2. But I've played... I don't know. I can't say how much of it I've played. I want to say, like, 10 hours of it, maybe? That might be overshooting it a little bit. 10 seems like a lot. I can't tell. I got a decent ways in. I never finished it, and I think I got maybe to the third, whatever it was, like was it the medical bay? I might be totally misremembering this. But yeah, it's a more polished System Shock 1 in many ways. It's full 3D for one. Most people probably remember, or they've heard of System Shock 2, but I would definitely recommend giving System Shock 1 Enhanced a go. It's by Night Dive, who always do really good work on these things, for the most part. Speaking of, Night Dive's going to come up a few times today, actually, probably. News today. System Shock. So if you weren't aware, Night Dive Studios, they did the Enhanced Edition, and they were also doing a full remake of the game, which has been like in the works since 2016. It's had a very long development cycle. There's a demo out, and a lot of it's very like, ooh, this is this gonna be when something's in development for that long, and it's like a remake of a game too. It's not like a new game. It's like, raises some eyebrows. So people have been waiting on this, and there was also there's a ton of confusion around the System Shock series about like this remake, and then, is there going to be a System Shock 3? Yeah, there's going to be System Shock 3. Oh wait, there's not going to be an SS3. And now this news comes out. System Shock live action series in the works from Binge and Night Dive. Okay. So you've probably never heard of Binge unless you live in Australia. However, that's a lie, because even if you live in Australia and use Binge, you have not heard of Binge, because they're two different things. Let me explain. So, Night Dive, who I guess has the rights now to System Shock, is doing a live action adaptation TV series. It's weird to call things TV series when they're on streaming, but of System Shock, I guess the original game. This will be not on Netflix or Hulu or anything you've heard of. It's going to be on an up-and-coming streaming service called Binge. Now, if you search up Binge, you are going to get a search result immediately. If you search a binge streaming service, you're going to get one result at the top of the page. That is not the right binge. There is an Australian streaming service called Binge. There is another company starting their own streaming service also called Binge. The only difference I can find between like the two brands is that the Australian one has it looks like it's like all caps, and the new one is just a word, just a regular. It's not all caps. What the? Huh. Okay. I'm looking at the bottom of the Binge, the Australian website, and they have like a disclaimer about like native peoples. Okay, I have no idea. I'm not going to touch that. So this new Binge, which I guess by contrast their logo is all lowercase, whereas the Australian Binge is all caps. This new Binge is not just any regular streaming service. It is the gamers streaming service. It's for this one's for the gamers. Fuck, how do I even describe this? So Binge, all lowercase, is modeled after a freemium. They have the same business model as a freemium video game, aka it is free. So it's free, and they provide gaming-centric content. And as you watch things on the platform, you earn, I don't know if it's supposed to be pronounced bits or bytes. Maybe bytes, because like binge eating? I have no idea. It's spelled B-Y-T-Z. Bytes. I'm going to say bytes. So earn useful bytes rewards for binging exclusive shows, premium channels, and original live-action series, where your favorite games come to life. All only on Binge. They have no like details on like how do you use this these bytes? What do they do? Why do I care? What programming do you have? I can't find any of that on their website. They only have one thing listed, and it's not even System Shock. I guess they're also streaming E3 2021? Has that happened yet? Wait. When the fuck is E3? E3 2021. Yeah, it already happened. What? Yeah, I was like, wait, it happened in June. It says E3 2021. Did they stream it there? Do they have an app? I have like no idea. So the problem is that they have like horrible SEO because number one, they share a name with a competitor. How would you? That's like opening up a store called McDonald's that sells fast food. What? They share a name with a competitor in the same industry, in the same business. And it's also, their name is also like just a word. So if you search up like binge streaming, you're either going to get the Australian one, which is already an established company and brand, and you're also going to just get like discussions about binge watching shows on streaming services. And I guess they're doing System Shock. What? So apparently, two guys from Night Dive will be executive producers, and Binge's chief content officer, Alan Ungar, will produce. So like I can't find, it's so hard to find any like actual info on what the heck this company is. Let's just do a quick binge gaming streaming. There's a Forbes article. Apparently they're billing themselves as the new Netflix for gaming shows. I feel like this has never worked out because I mean, I guess like back in the day, like G4 kind of did that, like X-Play, but I feel like it all just moved online to like YouTube and stuff. I don't know if this is going to be successful at all. It's coming 2022. Am I curious about a System Shock live action? Not really, actually. I feel like, how would you do a System Shock live action? It's a very lonely. System Shock is a very like lonely game. It's very like isolating game is the thing, because you're basically just this one person who is only partially human, in this place that's been completely like destroyed by machinery and computers and the only biological life left is horrible like mutants. And there's like one of the things that's really striking about System Shock is how little humanity there is. It's like extremely cyberpunk in that regard. It's very like dismal. There's very little like comfort in that game, and I don't know how you would adapt that to live action with, I'm assuming like one, maybe you would do like because like doing the story of like the actual game, like the gameplay part, the part of the game you actually play, you would need like one actor and some voice actors to fill in stuff. And maybe it would be like a prequel to, you know, all the stuff that happened beforehand, but I don't know. It feels like something that just doesn't adapt super well. It feels like it's just only works as a game. Maybe I could be proven completely wrong, but I don't know if I really want to see an immersive sim that I can't play. Did they announce themselves at E3? That's so goofy. Binge will stream on any internet. Binge also plans to offer a squad parties function that aims to harness existing online communities by allowing friends to watch content together in a gamified manner, earning meaningful rewards just for watching series and shows. So I still don't understand like what these rewards are for. These little bites. These little yeah, they're gonna make like, basically they're just doing fan films of video games. Do people like want to see that? Are they offering like microtransactions? Like, what do you get with your bytes? I have no clue. What if they did like what if they did a movie that was just a ripoff of The Thing, but it was just Among Us? The Thing was just, you know, Among Us before before Among Us. I have no clue. I don't know. I'm assuming it's gonna fail because I don't know anyone who I don't know anyone who would be excited over this stuff. I feel like I have like a pretty decent gauge on what's gonna be successful in gaming. I don't know. I feel like I've been right more often than not. And I don't know anyone. My gut tells me that I don't know anyone who would be interested in this. really, like, I might have mentioned this before, but really targeted, like, specific, how would you call it? Really niche streaming services tend to, like, not be super huge because they're niche, unless it's something that's very broad, like anime, like Crunchyroll or something, just because anime is extremely broad. It really isn't. It's more of just a medium than it is a any kind of, like, specific genre or angle. Like, saying, oh, this is all for anime is very different from saying this is all for gaming shows. Just like, I already have YouTube for that. What? Huh? Oh, it's like adaptations? Great. Everyone loves adaptations of video games. Everyone loves it. I've been talking about this for a while. I'm just very confused about System Shock. I would highly recommend the Enhanced Edition, though. And System Shock 2. I think they're great games. Next up, SNK announced that King of Fighters 98 is going to get a rollback update. I'm actually kind of excited for this, sort of. I'm not a huge King of Fighters fan. I've put a little bit of time into KOF 2002 because that's the other one on Steam that has rollback. And I've always heard that, like, the best... So just from what I know, from what I've heard that the best KOF games are 98, 2002, and 13. That's what I've always heard. Those are the really standout ones. 98 scares me a little bit because of the time that I put into 2002. The execution window in those games is, like, ridiculous. Maybe just because I'm, like, soft, you know? Maybe just because I'm a zoomer. But I could, like, not do, like, a basic 3-hit combo in 2002 with any kind of consistency. It's, like, extremely tight. I'm already, like, not a huge fan of, like, links and stuff. It's not my favorite combo system, which is funny because my favorite character of all time is Slayer. My favorite fighting game character of all time is Slayer, who uses links. So 98 intimidates me in the sense of, like, would I, am I gonna even be able to, like, play? I actually don't know who's on. So I've only really ever enjoyed, like, playing 4 characters in KOF. With my very limited experience, the only characters I've enjoyed are Yamazaki, Kula, Mature, and Hydern. And I've never put in any time to, like, actually learn them for any substantial, like, period of time. So I'm actually, who's in the 98 roster? KOF 98. Oh, it's specifically, like, it's KOF 98 Ultimate Match, which is, like, the updated version of it. Let's see. Oh wow, this webpage just broke. What the heck? What the heck? Oh my god. The SNK wiki just, it's broken. What the heck? It's just, like, it's all in plain text. What? It's because of, like, a add-on I have or something? Holy shit. Let's look at Dream Cancel, I guess. Let's see if any of those characters... Oh, okay. Yamazaki's there. Mature's there. Is Kula in this game? Nope. I think she's a little later. And, is Hydern here? Nope. Okay. Yeah. Okay, well, if I pick it up, then I guess I have to find a third character. Maybe King. I think King is neat. I love her design. I think she's super cool. Um, yeah. So I have nothing much else to say about it other than that I'm really glad that SNK is embracing their updating their older games to be enjoyed now online. That's actually really neat. The public beta, I think, of the rollback update is going to start like tomorrow. I'm recording this on Monday, so this is going to come out a little bit late. It's coming in, and the public beta happens on the 19th. All right. I want to take a break a little bit from talking about games. I want to talk about. I mentioned, I think last time, I wanted to talk a little bit about some movies. Specifically, I know this is not a gaming podcast. This is a Cellar podcast. Namely, because it's October, this is one of the few times. So here's the thing: is I don't watch movies at all. I don't watch movies. I don't watch TV series. I don't do any of that. The content I consume is games. I watch YouTube videos. I read and I listen to music. I do not watch things with any degree of regularity. Like, I don't. It's just not. I don't know. It doesn't like catch my fancy, which some people probably find weird, but I don't do any of that. Besides YouTube. The only movies that I'm really familiar with and that I will go out of my way to watch are usually like public domain sci-fi and horror movies. That's just who I am. I have an IMDb where it's just all that. I just rate those. I love the public domain. I am a huge fan of public domain stuff and being able to enjoy those things for free, which I think is amazing. And I wanted to talk about 3 specific movies that are in the public domain that you can watch right now for free in full on YouTube, sometimes upscaled into HD. I don't think all of them are, but maybe like 2 of them actually. These are all horror movies / sci-fi-ish movies. You'll see. First 2 are overt horror films. So the first one I want to talk about is called Alice, Sweet Alice. It is from when is it from? I want to say 1970? 76. Okay. So, but it takes place in 1961. Yes. So basically, Alice, Sweet Alice is, if you like Halloween. Okay, so Alice, Sweet Alice, you can describe it as a slasher film, but much less Friday the 13th and more Halloween, because it's kind of like in that proto slasher area where there's a killer, there's murder, there's stabbing and slashing and all that, but it isn't like incredibly gory. Like the appeal is a little different. Like when you watch Friday the 13th, for instance, it's kind of like fun. It's kind of like fun and popcorny, and you're like, ooh, who's gonna die next? What crazy way are they gonna get offed? However, when you watch something like Halloween, it's much more interested in the tension, and I'm a big fan of tension and atmosphere, as you might be able to tell. And that's really what like that movie is going for. It's kind of scooping you into this this is not scooping, wrapping you up in this feeling, this ominous suspense about whether or not this character is going to die or not. And you tend to be a little more invested in the characters than in a Friday the 13th type of thing, where it's just like, these are our stock victims. Who do you think's gonna survive? They have like 2 personality traits at most each. Alice Sweet Alice is much more interested in the suspense angle. So not as many deaths, like not a huge kill count, but it's the ones that are there are built up so incredibly that it's like it's huge, this huge like rush of terror. So to explain a little bit about what the movie's actually about. So it takes place in like the 60s, in Detroit, pretty sure. Yeah, it's in Detroit, New Jersey. You know. So it takes place in 61 in New Jersey. So the idea is that the film opens, and this isn't spoilers. It's kind of built around a mystery angle, mystery aspect. There's this girl, and she's getting ready for her first communion. So she's in like the 2nd grade. And she's in the back of the church. Her name is Karen, I think. Yeah, so she's 9, and she has an older sister named Alice. She's in the back of the church, Karen is, and then all of a sudden, she's found in the back of the church. She's been strangled to death. And everyone's like, what the fuck? And her sister Alice wears that. She's kind of a weirdo. Their parents are divorced. They live with their mom. Alice is kind of a strange girl, and she wears this yellow raincoat and this kind of like half translucent mask with it's really creepy. It's this really creepy looking mask. It's one of the most well known, like, if you know about this movie, the least that you know is the image of this mask. It's got kind of an apricot skin tone, and it's very molded to like look like a face with these kind of like big exaggerated cheeks and lips, almost like a what would you call it? I'd have to look at it. It some kind of like a. It's weird. It's a weird looking mask where it's like shiny but also skin colored. It has these rosy cheeks. It kind of gives off the same vibes as like a wax figure, where it looks like skin but it's too smooth and polished. And she's strangled by someone wearing this exact same outfit that Alice wears, the little sister. And I think, let's see, if I remember correctly, all they find is her like yellow raincoat or something. And it's like, so immediately there's suspicion because this 9-year-old girl has just been murdered in the back of a church before her first communion. Huge, like, what, like, how did this, what happened here? And everybody kind of gets pulled into this mystery around who killed her. And you're thinking, because like obviously the setup is that it's Alice, but you're looking at her, you're like, is this 12-year-old girl? She's weird, but she doesn't seem like a murderer. But there's all of these other people who are kind of like involved or around the situation, and they're just sort of weird. They live in this apartment, and this apartment building, and there's like this creepy, gross neighbor who's like a barely concealed pedophile, and he's just a total creep. there's these other people. You're looking at all these people, and you're like, it's almost like a whodunit, where it's, you're like, which one of these people is the red herring? And there's all of these. You're just kind of watching this mystery unfold, where the police start to kind of suspect that it was in fact Alice, but you're like, they don't know what the motive would be. And at home, there's all these conflict. It's an incredibly like tense film. There's, once the murder happens, the dad, who is now remarried, he decides to like drive down. He lives like a few states away or something from New Jersey. He lives in like New York or something like that. So he drives down, obviously very traumatized by this news, and he's just kind of like meeting with his ex-wife, and there's this scene where they're in the apartment, and the ex-wife's her like sister is there, and the sister hates the ex-husband, and it's just they kind of get into this like argument while Alice is there. I feel like a dish breaks or something like that, and it's like it's just this very uncomfortable environment. It also takes place, I think what adds to it a lot is the setting, because it takes place in New Jersey in the 60s. And New Jersey in the 60s looks like Detroit in everyone's jokes about Detroit. But it's these like, it's in this kind of, not everywhere is run down, but it's definitely kind of, it feels like a decaying environment. There's these huge like brick apartment buildings. Maybe it kind of strikes me because I grew up in Chicago, and if you've never been to Chicago or the greater, Chicagoland area outside of the downtown, a ton of the city was destroyed in the Chicago fire in like, what was the exact year? I don't want the sports team. I don't want the TV show. 1871. A ton of the so that was on the southwest side of the city. So a ton of the buildings got burned down, and a lot of Chicago's like architecture outside of the downtown, where there was mostly just like stone buildings, was just destroyed. And in order to like rebuild it, they just like basically just threw down just like big housing complexes, and just big, a lot of Chicago is horribly ugly because it's just brick and cement blocks. They looks like your first house in Minecraft, where there's like, it's just a cube with like windows on it. And New Jersey, the setting in this movie has kind of a similar sort of vibe going on, where it's these kind of run down, but still like, very clearly like 20th century, very utilitarian buildings. And it's extremely rainy. I remember like the rain is super heavy in this film. There's just like this sense of things being kind of like, it almost feels like like when you look at like ruins of like an ancient society, except it's modern. It's a very interesting vibe. Like all the characters are just in this like decaying shell of a society. And there's this heavy, overbearing atmosphere to the whole thing. On top of like, maybe not on top of, but supporting this mystery of like this horrible thing that's happened. Anything else I want to say about Alice, Sweet Alice? Right. There's these like, so one of the great things about this, the location, is that because there's these apartment buildings which are kind of tight, and this is another thing that, I've been in places like this. There's lots of staircases, right? There's a lot of staircases because they're just kind of like compact. They're going for like fitting as many people as possible. And it really lends itself well to, without spoiling anything, extremely tense story, or pardon me, extremely suspenseful scenes of like first person POV walking up or down staircases where you can't quite see what's around the corner, and you're always kind of vulnerable. Kind of like in Castlevania when you're super vulnerable on the staircases. It's like someone could be just around the corner, they could be hiding behind the banister, they could be hiding underneath the stairs, and just these quiet first person things where you shots where there's just like the creaking of the stairs, and it's very slow, and you're just waiting, and it's just like agony. It's just agonizingly suspenseful. It's a great movie. You can watch it for free. I'm going to link all of the links to like the YouTube uploads of these films down below so that you could click right on. There's a ton of like Catholic imagery. It's very, I don't know, it's a very like memorable movie. Second movie I want to talk about is Carnival of Souls from 1962, right? I'm not getting that wrong. Am I? It is 1962, right? Hey, I got a good memory. So Carnival of Souls is another like cult classic horror film. It's from 62. It's another one where there's really no like violence or death or anything like that. It's just mood and tone. So the basic idea of Carnival of Souls is that a woman, she's in this car accident where she almost dies, and she survives, she gets out of it, and she's an organist. She plays the organ, and she's playing at like this church, and she just figures she needs like a switch up. This was a very like traumatic experience for her. She just needs like a fresh start. She can't be hanging around the same place. So she decides to get a job as an organist in this small town in Utah. That's where it is. So it was filmed. Okay, so the movie it takes place in Utah, but I think it's filmed in Kansas and Salt Lake City. So just all over the place. Well, I mean, Salt Lake City's in Utah. But she gets a job in Utah. She's driving down, and things start happening to her. It's a very uneasy movie. It kind of starts when she's like driving down the road, and there's just like this weird pale man who just stares at her, that she just passes right by and freaks her out. She's like, what the fuck? And then he's gone. She goes in, she just kind of brushes it off, like maybe she's just, tired or whatever. She gets there, she's staying at this kind of inn where she's there for like long term. She's renting out this room, and she just has these troubles. She never feels comfortable. She never feels like she can really make any friends or assimilate into the community. She just feels like an outsider. And then continuously, it's hard to describe without going into spoilers. But basically, you always have this sense that something's not quite right. And sort of the symbol of it, and one of the most memorable things from this movie is the, what was it called? Oh, what the heck was it called? Well, it's never given a name. It's this one specific location that she's driving, and as she's driving to this town, she sees kind of on the side this giant abandoned pavilion on the shores of the Great Salt Lake. So she stops, she asks about it, she's like, what's that huge place over there? Because it just catches her attention, it just kind of draws her in, and she can't stop thinking about it. She asks about it, and this like guy at a gas station tells her that it was a bathhouse. So first it was a bathhouse, this giant, like, kind of, it has almost like Taj Mahal type architecture, like it's kind of aping that. Then it was a dance hall. I'm sort of looking at the Wikipedia to refresh my memory a little bit. And then finally it was renovated into a carnival before it closed. And this location was a real place. It was shot on location at a place that was, what the heck was it called? Saltaire Pavilion. So if you're curious, if you just look up the Saltaire Pavilion, you'll see pictures. Oh, well, it's gone now, but it was demolished a while ago. But you just look up pictures of it, and it's just this very weird place on the water. It's kind of like suspended on or it's propped up on stilts, and it's just this is very odd looking building, but this huge, very lavish thing, and it looks like it could be a carnival with this big kind of tunnel leading towards it that you drive to or walk through from the shore, and it just has a weird vibe. It has a weird feel. I'm saying vibe a lot. It has a weird feeling to it. You're interested in it. And she's in this town. One of the things that makes the movie difficult to describe without just explaining what happens is that there's this constant, pervasive feeling that something is wrong, that something kind of unknown and terrifying is happening. It captures either like the people she interacts with, or there's like a period of normalcy, and then something out of a nightmare will happen. And I really mean that, of like, this movie is really good at capturing the feeling of being in a nightmare. It like, you know, when you're having a bad dream, and you're in some place like recognizable, but something's wrong. And then suddenly everything is, you can't tell what's wrong, but you just feel like something's wrong. And then suddenly something changes, something's different in a very noticeable way. And you're just like, why is it like that? Like if the sun, if you went outside and the sun was a different color, you're like, what is going on, with seemingly no explanation. And there's no explanation, and you're just stuck there. And it's nothing is threatening you. Nothing is overtly threatening you, but everything in the world is wrong. And that's like terrifying. You feel trapped by something you don't really understand, almost in like a very cosmic way. This movie is amazing at tapping into that feeling. And there's a couple scenes where she goes to the pavilion because she needs like closure. She goes to it a few times, and she just needs closure. And she's just walking around in this giant, dilapidated carnival. And there's these shots where it really uses a lot of negative space, of just kind of like, maybe not negative space, but empty, still space, where she is very small in the frame. It's shot from very far away, and as if there's someone watching her, but never quite confirmed that that's what's going on. And you're always looking around, like, as she's just kind of pacing and walking through and just looking around at things, and you're just constantly on edge looking for something scary, right? You're looking at something moving or something to tip you off, and you're just waiting. And like the first time she goes, at least, that never happens. There's nothing scary, but you're like just constantly looking. Maybe something is there and I've never seen it and I just missed it when I've watched this film. But like, it's so like overbearing. It's just this feel. It's a very mood movie. I'm not big into films that you can just kind of put on in the background. I hate that. Like, I hear people talk about, I don't get invited to parties, but I hear people talk about, like, oh yeah, you go to, like, a Halloween party and there's just a movie playing in the background and no one's really watching it. And the idea of that, like, causes me stress. I hate the idea that, like, something is going on and that, like, you could be invested in, and that's, like, a piece of art or something, and it's just being ignored. It's just... It gives me this feeling of like, have you ever seen like a performer do something, like perform something in public, and it's like if no one pays attention and they're just like desperately trying to get you to notice and no one does and no one cares. It's just like an incredibly stressful idea for me for some reason. Like, I hate that. I don't like just putting on music during stuff. Unless you're like in a car or something. I don't know. I would rather just silence. I would rather silence than noise that no one's listening to. That's just a personal thing. So none of these are like fun. Oh, let's put something on. Unless you're like, oh, let's do a scary movie night, and we're all gonna actually commit to watching a movie, type thing. Or you want to watch any of these on your own, which I'd also recommend. They work great for that. Kind of leads me, sort of, to my third and last film. Oh, I kind of wanted to mention, one of the things that makes Carnival of Souls really eerie is that it's like the only movie that most of these people worked on, like including cast and crew. I mean, including cast and crew, as if that's not everyone, but like including the crew. A lot of people. So this was directed by a guy named Herc Harvey, and actually does he play the weird guy? I never knew that. I must have just forgotten that. So yeah, so the only movie he ever directed, it looks like he was a screenwriter and a producer, but the only movie he ever actually directed that was not like an educational or like industrial film was this. Apparently, oh, that's funny. I never knew that. So, the writer was, let me see. I'm actually reading a little bit about the development now, so. So he got the idea inspired by driving past the Solitaire Pavilion, and then when he returned to Kansas, he asked his friend and coworker at Centron, which was their company, who was a writer, his name was John Clifford, how, like, would you want to ever like write a movie based on this like idea? And he basically only described what the last scene had to be. And then in 3 weeks, he came back with the script for this movie. It was amazing. I love that last scene. God. So the main actress, her name is Candice Hilligoss. She was 20 years old, and this was like her only role, and she literally just took it for the money, which is really funny. Yeah, the music. Yeah, I'm remembering. I'm just kind of going over some of the bullet points and just kind of reminding myself. One of the neat things about this movie is the music, the organ, which she, plays, is a heavy feature in the soundtrack. So it's almost like she is playing the soundtrack of the film. It's really neat. I love this movie. You can go watch it again. All of these will be linked below. And I want to move on to the third movie. It is called... This isn't really a horror movie. It's kind of hard to describe. It's called These Are the Damned. So, let me explain a little bit of backstory about the production of this film. These Are the Damned is from... I have to remind myself of the years of all these. It's from 62. Oh, it's this... wait. Also just called The Damned. The title is a funny story. So it's either 62 or 63. I think it was released in different years. Oh, it was released in 65 in the US. So this movie had like a weird production history. Basically, so it's described as a science fiction horror film. And the original, so it takes place in this coastal seaside town in England, and the main character is this guy named Simon, who is an American tourist, and he meets this girl while he's there, who is they kind of have a little love romantic thing, and they have, she's the younger sister of the leader of a like black jacket motorcycle gang, who's named King. And so the movie is really interesting because one of the main things that it centers around is this cliffside. This woman lives on top of this cliffside. She's an artist, and she's kind of like she's like not a super important character, but she kind of like facilitates her kind of like location facilitates a lot of the events of the movie. And the movie was originally supposed to be called The Precipice, and the producers thought that was too pretentious or too highbrow. And if you look up this movie, this isn't really a spoiler. There are weird kids in it. There are weird children in this movie. And they looked at that and they were like, okay, we have these other two films. These other two movies that are called Children of the Damned and Village of the Damned, which are fun little movies about like terrifying psychic children. And they were like, okay, movie with weird kids. Let's market this as if it is another film in the Damned series. It's not. It isn't at all. It has nothing to do with those, besides the fact that there are weird children with something. There's something more going on with them, to be vague about it. But it kind of works for the movie, honestly, because it's a film that takes a lot of twists and turns that you aren't expecting. It starts as one thing, and then it kind of slowly reveals itself to be another. it starts because the movie begins. I want to say like the whole first act is really a. Pardon me. The whole first act really plays out like a Romeo and Juliet love story where they're trying to be together and the brother doesn't like it and he's got this gang and I haven't done my stretches today. Haven't stretched at all. Whew. Guess it's good. Now's as good a time as ever. It starts off as this Romeo and Juliet type thing, and then it like that plot line kind of like trips and crashes into this weird science fiction horror story that is happening around this cliffside with these weird kids. And it's I don't want to just talk about it because I do want people to go look it up and watch it for themselves. It's like 90 minutes. It's not, these are all pretty regularly lengthed movies. It's one of the it's better to know less about it going in because there's a lot of things that are weirdly clever and really interesting and you never really know what's going to happen because the movie makes this weird pivot. It makes this weird it's not as much of a pivot as it is a like transformation into a different movie, and it's just really cool. It's very rare to see a story that does that kind of twist, where it's like a midway twist where it just you're like, wait, what is going on? And the characters are really right along there with you, where they were just in a situation where they understood exactly what was going on. Now they're really not sure. There's some odd, weird stuff happening. There's some decent character development. There's a really good... I really love this scene where... so this lady who lives on this cliff, she's an artist, and she makes these weird kind of... she makes these sculptures out of petrified wood, and they're in these really strange kind of twisty, very abstract shapes. And there's a scene where she's talking to another character. Who is she talking to? I kind of forget. It's one of two characters. I can't remember. But they basically ask her. They look at one of these statues, and she goes. They ask her what it means, and she says something like, "If I was able to explain it, I wouldn't have to make it." And I really love that quote. It's such a very simple thing about like making art and stuff. And it really just gives this really neat insight into what kind of a person she is, of how the way that she like makes the reasons she creates art are just kind of like unknown even to her. She just has this like desire to this like calling to make it, and she can't explain it. And it's almost something where like if you were to explain it in words, it wouldn't do it justice because it's not about words, it's about a feeling. It's kind of like like I'm a creative person, I guess I would say. I tend towards creative fields and stuff like that. And one of my main things, which I guess you don't get to experience a whole lot with my channel, is that I am a writer. I love writing. I love fiction writing. And I also played music for like 7, 8, 9 years, since like the 4th grade through high school. And I'm a trumpet player, if you're curious. And I've always had a very like close relationship with music, but I'm not that good at like making it. And it's kind of frustrating because I read this study one time that apparently when we hear music or we hear sound, this might be like just a product of like evolution and survival instincts, but sound is the sense that we react to, our body has a reaction to the fastest, where you can hear a song and you don't have to think at all about it. It's really interesting. You don't have to like, your brain doesn't have to interpret music to have a reaction to it. Unlike something visual where you have to like understand. You have to break it down on some level. You have to understand it. It's going to take you a second of thinking to have a reaction. Music and like sound is very it's like instantaneous. And I always thought that was really fascinating, and it kind of almost frustrated me that I wasn't able to use words to communicate a feeling in the same way that music is able to do so instantaneously. That's always been kind of frustrating for me, and I think in a way I kind of morphed my writing style around mood and wanting to like invoke feelings in the reader as opposed to direct like imagery, if that makes sense, or literal imagery. Not everything. You can go read some of my like horror shorts, and I tried I paid a lot of mind to prose, and I try to do it with like titles too, of like, I like having very kind of abstract titles that are kind of just sort of like just abstract bullshit words thrown together, but it's less about the meaning of the words and more about the they don't really make sense together, but they invoke a feeling, or they at least did in me when I came up with them. And sometimes I would just sit down and I would write I would come up with like a phrase, and then I would write a story. The phrase would be I would get a feeling from the title. I would come up with a phrase that was just words I'd put together that like clicked or sounded nice or sounded interesting, and I decided that was going to be the title of a story, and then I wrote the story based off of the mood that it gave me, the feelings that it gave me, with no real like outline or structure. Specifically, I remember doing that. I had a short story called I was just putting words together in my head one day at school, and I to try and see if I could come up with something that I liked, and I came up with a story called Insomniac and Bitter Chocolate, and I wrote that in like 2 days, and I really enjoyed it, and people always have kind of like a very I don't know, they always have kind of weird reactions to it, where they always kind of want to know like what was going on. I'm like, I really don't know. It was just what was going on in this story. I don't know. It was just kind of based on feeling. I just kind of wrote it on feeling and not on any kind of like hard facts and details. And I just kind of like let my brain kind of guide me on that one, and it sort of filled itself and built itself out as I went along. So I don't know, that the line always I wouldn't have to, maybe I could find the exact quote. on like IMDb or something like that. But that quote always struck me as being very, I don't know, very memorable. They have like a quote section. Doesn't look like they have it. That's interesting. Because it's very memorable. Oh, yeah. Oh, you know, it's almost exactly, almost exactly as I remembered it. If I could explain these, I wouldn't have to make them. That always just, I don't know, it really stuck with me. Great movie. It's paced super well. It really keeps you on your toes and thinking about, like, what the heck this is going to be about. Like, where is this going? Great ending, too. I would highly recommend it. These Are the Damned, or just The Damned from 1962. All of these are going to be linked down below, and they're all going to be links to YouTube, because you don't even have to go to an external site to see them, because they're all in the public domain. Isn't that just wonderful? Yeah, that's kind of like my end of my spiel about movies that I like. I kind of want to wrap this up by talking about Shadow Warrior. I've been playing Shadow Warrior recently, the original 1997 game. And so Shadow Warrior was the kind of like, in the big three of the build engine games, Shadow Warrior was the last one, but it's considered up there. The big three are Duke Nukem, Blood, and Shadow Warrior, which were released in that order. Duke and Shadow Warrior were both by 3D Realms, but Blood was by Monolith. Shadow Warrior definitely does have a different feeling. It's kind of neat playing all these games because I just finished like replaying Blood, or you know, parts of Blood for the last video, and it's really neat to kind of go and like see how the same engine with the same basic idea was executed differently by different studios. And Shadow Warrior right now, I definitely prefer Blood. I mean, Blood's one of my favorite games of all time. Shadow Warrior is difficult for me to like really give a strong opinion of. Gosh, goodness gracious. For me to give like a strong opinion on. Partially because I haven't finished the entire thing yet. I want to say I'm like almost done. I'm like 80% done, maybe 70% done with it. I think I have like 5, maybe 6 levels to go. It has much larger. It has less levels than Blood or Duke. But the levels themselves are much larger, way more intricate. And really, I think one thing that it has up on Duke is how strongly themed all the levels are. Duke sort of had some levels that, especially in like the middle, where it just kind of gets into more, I don't know, generic. It feels a little more generic. Shadow Warrior has just felt like every single level has such a strong theme to it. And there's all this like detail, and you can really tell like what everything is supposed to represent. Build engine games in general are really good at taking a space that is recognizable and turning it into making it just like video gamey enough to be a cool place to have a shootout. So Shadow Warrior is the same way that Duke was like an 80s action throwback. Shadow Warrior is like a kung fu karate action movie throwback. It is definitely not the most PC thing ever. And the thing is that I am not Asian, so I can't be offended by it. I could definitely see how you could sit two like Chinese people down, and one of them could find it really offensive, and one of them could find it really funny. Uh, it's kind of in an interesting space where it's not. When you go and you read the thing, because like Lo Wang, first of all, his name is Lo Wang, the main character. When you like his just yeesh, he's very like, I don't even know if I could do an impression because it's doing an impression of an impression. So his voice actor is white, but all the voice lines are like pretty. It's like when you find like a secret, he goes ancient Chinese secret, and it's like, oh boy. But you go and you read these interviews with the people who made the game, and the entire thing was done out of love. It's just extremely awkward, misplaced love, where it's like they just legitimately liked all this stuff, and they made something that was an homage to it. So there isn't like, you can tell when you, for instance, if you watch something like Birth of a Nation, you know, it's like, okay, this is like racist. This is like making an argument that like black people are scary and you need to defend your white community from these invaders which we brought over. But that's beside the point. Like, it's making a statement. Shadow Warrior doesn't make a statement. It's just kind of in poor taste. And you can look at that and say, like, I don't like that. Or you could look at it and say, well, I don't know. You can kind of look, if you want to, you can look past it and just kind of enjoy the game for what it is. Which is really hard. Shadow Warrior is an extremely difficult game. And it might be because I'm more used to, like, might be because I'm not used to it, I should say. Because I've played Blood so many times. I've beaten Blood on hard. I've, I beat Duke 3D on its hard mode. And I'm playing Shadow Warrior right now on hard. And there's a lot of moments in that game where it's like the designer like hates you. The designer wants you to be sad. He wants you to be upset. It's monumentally difficult. Probably harder than Duke 3D. But you do get some neat tools to kind of combat it. Okay, I'm just doing random thoughts about my reaction to this game. The explosion radiuses are huge. Just like massive. I'm used to other build engine games where you can kind of be like sort of around the explosion and it won't hurt you. Shadow Warrior, it's like you gotta take cover. It's gotta be like a ways away for you to not take damage from the explosion. Which makes the fact that you have to rely a lot on explosive weapons very tricky to work with. I find myself using the rocket launcher and the grenade launcher a lot, because you get a lot of ammo for both of them. But they're fun. They're fun to use, especially the grenade launcher. I love grenade launchers in games. I think that they just have like it's very satisfying to like use this kind of physics-based thing where it's sort of a unique, it's not just a direct like aim thing, but you kind of have to measure like how high you want to shoot the grenade, and you have to think about explosion radius. You can like bounce it around corners, and you do a lot of pull out the grenade launcher, shoot some grenades around the corner, and then you see the explosion and blood and guts flying out from the side. You're like, okay, I guess I was smart. Good move, me. You do a lot of that. But things will kill you super fast in this game. It has the same thing as Blood, where there's a lot of enemies that just like, it has several enemies that are hit scanners that just have like split-second reaction time, and they will just take chunks out of your health instantly, which is one of the reasons why the grenades and all the explosive weapons are really important. It does do... The weapons generally feel pretty good. You move slower than other games, and other build games. But the weapons kind of... the design sort of makes up for it, because there's more dense spaces, if that makes sense. The levels they're smaller than the ones in Bloodfield, for instance, but they're a lot denser, where there's a lot more like interconnecting secret passages, and you like go down a well, and then you go through a little tunnel, and then you end up in a different place, and it's like you can find secrets. It feels a lot like tighter and more condensed in terms of its design, so the slower pace makes sense for that. The weapons generally feel pretty good. This game's shotgun, it's a 4-barreled shotgun that you can it has a primary fire where you just shoot one barrel, and has an alternate where you fire all 4 barrels in a row, and then you have to reload. It's called the riot gun. I saw a comment one time that said, only in China would a 4-barreled shotgun be referred to as a riot gun. Oops. It feels pretty good. It's alright. It doesn't have the same kind of punch exactly as other games' shotguns, but you do get to, like, it does make up for it with the whole, like, pumping a ridiculous amount of buckshot out in like a single click. That's neat. That's cool. You get to dual wield Uzis. That's fun, and they have a really long reload animation, which kind of like adds this. There's more weapons, I guess, in this game that have to reload, or is it really just the riot gun and the Uzis? Honestly, it's really just that one, now that I think about it. But those are weapons that you're going to be using a lot, so they kind of like strategically place the reload animations on these kind of workhorse weapons. So there's like it has an interesting balance. There's like shurikens that is kind of like the weak pistol type weapon, but they have like they're like projectiles, and you can like rapid fire them. Not the machine gun, the riot gun, the Uzis, those kind of it kind of has like it follows the formula. You've got like a melee weapon with a replacement, because you have like the fists, and then you get a sword. You have the weaker weapon on like 2 on the 2 key. Weapon 3 is the shotgun. Weapon 4 is the rapid fire hit scan weapon with the Uzis. 5 is a rocket launcher, which has 3 alternate modes of fire. It has the regular rockets, it has heat-seeking missiles, and then it has a nuke. You can just shoot a nuke, and once you switch to the nuke mode, you have to wait like 5 seconds for it to like ready up, and then you can fire. It's crazy. But again, there's that like blocking certain power behind wait times. Weapon 6 is like the explosive toss physics weapon with the grenade launcher. 7 is I kind of forget the later weapons a little bit. I think 7 is like proximity mines. 8 is a railgun, which feels okay. It does a decent amount of damage. And again, I do like railguns a lot. Railguns they're just snipers without scopes. Uh, what's on not the ninth slot? Is it the... Yeah, the ninth slot is like there's an enemy that you can kill called the Guardian, and it shoots... It's a big like green ogre monster that shoots fire out of its eyes. You can kill it, and then you can pick up its head, and then you can shoot the fire out of the head, and it has also has three alternate modes of fire. You just shoot a stream of fire, you can shoot fireballs around you, and then you can shoot fireballs that like extend outwards. And they all consume different levels of ammo. It's very like... I don't know, it's neat. You just pick up this thing's head and start using it as a weapon. And then I think the one on zero is... It's like this thing's heart that just kills everything around it when you crush it. You can only carry 5 of them at a time. It's called like the Ripper Heart. There's a lot of parts of the game that are fun. Going through and kind of battling through these really highly themed, very just realistic enough environments, is how I would describe them, is really neat. There's some really cool levels. There's like a prison break where you get captured, you get put in a prison, you go through a grate, and then you have to work through all the different levels of the prison. There's a level where you do a lot of like running around in this like, apartment complex. There's a level where you do you're on a boat. It mainly takes place on like this giant boat with just tons of enemies. You go down a ladder, and you go through all the levels, or not the levels, but all the rooms and passages in this like giant battleship, basically. There's vehicles. The vehicles are fine. They're more so used very sparingly and for very specific situations where you have to use them to like blow something up. And they're fine. They're pretty awkward and slow, and turning left and right is way too sensitive, but they're fine. There's some enemies that I just hate. So on top of the hit scanners, which are just kind of like a go-to very hateable enemy type in all of these types of games, there's these goddamn bees. These bees are horrible. If you've played this game, you know what I'm talking about. These bees, ooh, good lord. They're like impossible to hit. They do like 15 damage in like a single, by just like touching you. And they always come in swarms, and the designers always like to place them on like when you're doing platforming bits. I hate those things. There's like enemies who, it's a build engine game, so there's a lot of explosions naturally. There's enemies called coolies, which I'm pretty sure is like a slur from like the 1820s that like no one's used in 200 years. And they're just like weird ghosts or like zombies that have these explosive boxes. And if they get too close to you, they explode. And you can kill them to make them explode, but then sometimes like ghosts will rise out of their corpse, and you have to kill the ghost too, because it'll fly around and shoot projectiles at you. That's annoying. There's like a bunch of different like flavors of ninja that you have to fight, with machine guns, or some of them throw shurikens. There's red ones that will shoot at you, and then sometimes just shoot rockets at you. That's cool. The black ninjas, the like shadow ninjas, they're like partially invisible, where they have this like black fuzzy filter over them, like they're just like moving shadows, and they flashbang you. They shoot rockets at you, but they shoot this like special kind of rocket where it creates this trail of fire as it goes, and then it shoots like additional streams of fire from the side. Incredibly stressful enemy to fight. Just blast them. Just hit them with the rocket. Hit them with the missiles. Trying to think of any other. There's like these big gorilla type monsters called rippers that just jump around. They're okay. There's like they look like rippers, but they're more like aliens. I don't know. They look like xenomorph gorillas. I don't know what they're called, but they basically do the same thing as the rippers, except they shoot projectiles at you. They shoot little circle woo 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 beams at you. They're super easy to kill. The main problem is all the hit scanners. What else? Oh yeah, there's like these female ninjas who they have crossbows and they shoot arrows, which are projectiles, and then they also just throw proximity mines. There's some very interesting like enemy types that are very frustrating to deal with, because a lot of their damage is like instant. It's a game where you just start taking damage and you don't know why. It's a little annoying. I've definitely gotten frustrated while playing it. You just take damage and you're really not sure why. And it's like, oh, something exploded 10 feet away from you, like across the whole room, and then you took splash damage from it. Or, oh, the game spawned hit scanners up in like a balcony way above you. And also the hit scanner, the ninjas, they can crouch. That was one of the things that you could do in the build engine. You could have enemies with like different, you could change the size of their hitbox or their, yeah. And so this shows up in like all the build engine games where enemies can like, they'll crouch down to shoot at you. That's annoying, where they just crouch under like desks and walls and stuff. Hate that. It's just kind of an onslaught. It's just an onslaught that never really ends, of enemies who are just like always shooting at you, always explosions going on. Never really a chance to like rest or take a break. It's just constant action, which might have been part of the send up to its inspirations. But it's good. It's definitely, it does what it wants to do. I wouldn't call it badly designed. I would call it spitefully designed, where they want you to be upset. They want you to be angry. I'm enjoying it for what it is so far. Like, when I think about it, I enjoy it, but I'm angry while I'm playing it. I'm almost done with it. I'd like to finish it maybe, in the next few days when I have some time. Mainly put time into it over the weekend. The levels are really long and so intricate. It is impressive. It is cool. The spaces feel very well realized. It feels like they learned a lot from making Duke. I don't know if I have anything more to say in this podcast. This has been a fun one, just kind of talking about a tiny little bit of news and mainly just stuff that I care about. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I will definitely get to them next time. There is a video coming. Maybe there won't be a video this week. I haven't exactly decided. I might be able to get it done by that time, but if I can't, then I definitely am going to do a video for Halloween. I wanted to do a video for, it's going to be on that Friday or Saturday. I think this year Halloween falls on a Sunday, so it's going to be a little before that. But I also have a little special treat specifically for Halloween that will be separate, so that'll be fun. I'm looking forward to that, and doing it up. Thank you so much to everyone who subscribed. If anyone found me from that critical video, that was really super surreal. It was super weird, from that critical live stream when he watched my video. And if you're now watching the podcast, thank you for deciding to listen to almost 2 hours of my voice, which is starting to get tired. Thank you. I have nothing else to say. Bye.